Guys, we gotta talk about Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 has absolutely dominated my life recently. I am obsessed with it. It's all I can think about. All I want to do is just go back and play the game when I'm working or out or doing something else. I'm like just thinking about like when I get on Baldur's Gate, I want to do this and I gotta remember to do that and I should try out this strategy. And I can't believe I forgot that I have that item. Let me make sure I use that item next battle. And it's just, I've never been obsessed with a video game in this way before, ever. I wouldn't consider myself a gamer. I don't play lots of video games. I like video games, but I'm a very busy person, and so usually a lot of other stuff takes priority. But this game has captured me like no other game has before. And I just want to sink hours into it. I just want to get back into the world and get re-immersed into everything. And I need to talk about it. I need to talk about it, so let's talk about it. It is an absolute masterpiece, and I think I have a unique perspective because I have been playing Dungeons & Dragons for many years. As those of you who've been following the channel for many years know, that's the core of the birth of what this channel was. It came from talking about D&D in 5th edition. And so I am DM'd for campaigns and played a little bit, but mostly DM'd D&D for many, many years now. I do it professionally. That as my job is I run D&D games for people. And so I'm very, very familiar with the system, with Dungeons & Dragons, and so I think I have a unique perspective I can bring to the conversation when it comes to this game. But mostly I just want to talk about it with someone because I love this game. Okay, so currently I have 100 hours in Steam in the game. I just reached 100 hours, and then my save file in the game is almost 80 hours long. So I've played it quite a bit. I think I'm a bit into Act 3, maybe about a third of the way through Act 3. I'm not sure how long it is. So maybe a quarter to a third of the way through Act 3. But I think I've played enough now where I can speak on it a lot. And I'm not going to be saying anything spoilery, really. If anything, it's going to be very, 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 very minor spoilers about the game. And if anything, it's going to be contained mostly to Act 1. So you can watch this if you haven't played the game or you're thinking about playing the game. You can totally watch this video. Real quick, it is important to say, I recorded, initially my plan was to record myself playing this game, was to have in this video clips of me playing the game and all that kind of stuff, but I don't have the best computer. I have a gaming laptop, I don't even have a desktop, and it's not the most top-of-the-line machine, and so I realized once I started, or the game is already big and has some performance issues, on top of that, trying to screen record and stuff, just really dropped the frame rate to a unwatchable level. And so I've taken some screenshots and stuff to show you guys, but none of the footage I'll be showing you really is going to be from my own gameplay. It's either going to be from trailers or featured stuff or someone else's gameplay that I'll just throw up there. So unfortunately, none of it is going to be from my own playthrough just because I wasn't able to find a way to record it correctly. So I guess to start things off, let me introduce you to Talion of the Lilies. He is my half-elf bard who looks like a K-pop idol. Good-looking guy. I'm quite proud of him. So he's a Dark Urge origin character, which the developers apparently have said you shouldn't do for your first playthrough. And actually, that wasn't even my intention. I got a little bit confused during character creation. I didn't understand that that's what was happening. I thought I was creating a custom character. Turns out I was creating a Dark Urge character. So, whoops, my bad on that. So keep that in mind if you're in character creation. Keep in mind, Dark Urge, custom character, there's 2 different buttons there, and I got them confused somehow. I don't know, I'm kind of dumb. But I'm playing Dark Urge, which I know not a lot of people have played, definitely for their first run through. But I must say, it's actually really fun. It's actually a blast. I actually am really liking playing the Dark Urge. Obviously, it's a bit darker, and it adds a certain darker flavor to the story and to your character. But I think it adds a lot of dynamism to your character and their character arc, you could say. I'm not sure if a custom character can have as much of a strong character arc as a Dark Urge character, just because a Dark Urge is super intrinsically tied to the main story, especially now that I'm in Act 3. A ton of stuff is coming up now, which is like mind-boggling twists and turns and stuff, and my character is very connected to the lore and the story and the plot of the main campaign, and that is something that's really cool. and really awesome. And you usually don't get in RPGs like this where you can fully create your own character. If you think of like Bethesda games or whatever, typically, you know, if you look between something like Last of Us, which is my favorite game series of all time, and then like Bethesda RPGs, obviously Last of Us, you're playing a character in the world, they're intrinsically tied to the story, they have their own character arcs throughout the story. Whereas Bethesda games are more like you create your own character, you choose all their different stuff, you choose how to play them, who they're going to side with, you know, all that kind of, it's a lot more RPG. I wouldn't even say Last of Us is an RPG. It's just a story-driven game. But obviously, the more your character is super, you can create however they want, that you can go through about the story however you want. It makes it more difficult for that story, to make that character connected to the main plot. And Dark Urge is like a perfect middle ground where you can still create any sort of character you want. Make them look however you want, any race, class, or whatever, but they are still connected to the story, and you can still definitely have some really big choices you can make on your involvement in the story, and whether you get consumed by your Dark Urge or you resist against it. And I think it creates a really cool flavor. Just like in regular D&D, as I was in the incredible character creation screen, you know, for the first 7 hours. No, it wasn't that long, but, you know, maybe 2 or so hours of, I didn't even play the game, I was just creating a character because it's so dang fun. As I was creating him, obviously, I've played D&D for a very long time, and though I'm usually the dungeon master, I do play as characters sometimes. And so as I'm creating him, obviously I'm thinking about his backstory, his motivations, where does he come from, all that kind of stuff. And so that was really fun, and, you know, that's what you do in D&D. That's what you do when you create your character. Yes, you create the mechanical things, class, choose spells, but you also, of course, most importantly, choose who are they, and what kind of person are they, what motivates them, what happened in their past that made them who they are today. What's really cool is I have done this in RPGs before, right, like Skyrim or whatever, but you can't really role play as your character. It's fun to think of that stuff, but it shocked me just how much I was able to role play as Talion of the Lilies. As this character I'd created, when it gives me, you know, 10 different dialogue options on different ways I can react to things or whatever. Now, ultimately, most dialogue options are not going to be super impactful. Obviously, there's big choices you can make in the game, but it's just how you're choosing to navigate a conversation, even if at the end of it, it's basically ending up the same. You're role-playing as your character, and it really gives you so many options to choose the kind of character you want to play. And the fact that I was able to come up with this idea of who this character is, what motivates him, all this kind of stuff, his personality, and then actually have that personality and say things that he would say because those are somehow dialogue options. I mean, I have been playing the game and I've thought of, as someone's talking, an NPC's talking to me, I've thought of a response that my character would say, and then the dialogue thing pops up and there's a response almost identical to what I was imagining my character, how he would respond, and I was like just so blown away. So it's not, of course, the full breadth of role-playing that you can get in a tabletop role-playing game, obviously, because that's impossible to get the infinite possibilities of role-playing you can get. But I mean, they just about reach what you can imagine. Baldur's Gate 3 is very much built on D&D 5th edition, as you're probably aware. And so the rules work very, very, very similarly. They made a few tweaks, obviously, to make it fit in video game form instead of tabletop form. And then there's some stuff that they just had to completely remove because it would break the game or just be a whole lot of extra work if they put it in. But it's basically 5th edition. I mean, basically 5th edition. So if you are familiar with D&D 5th edition, Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be a lot easier for you. This is my first foray into the CRPG genre, and I was a little bit overwhelmed because it is an overwhelming, even when you just look at like the screen of someone playing the game, you're like, wow, this looks super overwhelming. What is this hotbar at the bottom with a million symbols on it? And then when they open up their inventory, you're like, dang, that inventory looks super cluttered and what is going on? But the cool thing is if you're familiar with D&D, if you're familiar with 5th edition, then the game is a lot easier to get into. You don't have to learn a whole new system or whatever. You just have to learn how the video game works, but because you already know how all the mechanics of 5th edition works, it just makes it a lot easier. Personally, I think this game is meant, I mean, it's made for a lot of people. I mean, all kinds of people can enjoy this game. But I think it's perfect for people who are interested in D&D, who want to play D&D, but haven't had the luxury to be able to play it in the tabletop form in person with people. I think there's a lot of people right now, because D&D is so popular these days, and there's things like the actual play series and stuff online that you can find. There's a lot of people who are interested in D&D who maybe have watched a live stream, or maybe watched the movie or whatever, who are interested in D&D, maybe have some sense of how the game works, but they've just never been able to actually get a game together. They don't want to DM because they've never played before, but they can't find someone to DM for them. They're not able to get a group together. Maybe they just don't have any friends that live in their area or whatever. But they really want to play D&D, but they just can't. And that can be a big bummer. And that's, I think, the case for a lot of people. But this game is meant to scratch that itch. Like, if you're someone who wants to play D&D, who's interested in it, but just can't get a group together in person and hasn't actually had a chance to play it yet, this is going to scratch the itch for you until you can get that group together. Because this, and it will actually get you more comfortable with the mechanics of it, so maybe you even are comfortable enough to run a game, to DM yourself after playing this game. But it is D&D, it works like D&D, all that kind of stuff. The Dungeon Master is the code of the computer, of the game, and you can kind of feel like you're role-playing as a character in a party of other characters, talking to them and whatever. And so it can really scratch that itch without, I think to the fullest extent ever, without actually being a tabletop game. I mean, they really have coded a line of dialogue, a scene, whatever, for every outcome you can imagine. It's really insane, the amount of detail that is put into this game and the amount of thought put into this game. They really wanted to make it like Dungeons & Dragons, which has infinite possibilities. It is such a sandbox. I mean, whatever you're thinking, you can probably do it. And so there are limitations, obviously, but I think it's the closest a video game has ever gotten to that threshold. Okay, we got to talk about the music. I know I'm rambling a little bit and there's not like a clear direction to this video, but there's so many aspects of this game that are amazing and I want to talk about. And first off, the music. I mean, the music is exceptional. I'm really into music. I love, I'm not a musician. I don't know how to play music or make music, but I love music in film and television and games and stuff like that. And I, when it comes to video game music, there are some kings of some of the best soundtracks. I'm thinking like Skyrim, obviously, Last of Us, Halo, right? These games have such iconic soundtracks. Even just hearing a little bit of a melody like makes you feel like you're a kid again playing on the Xbox and playing that game again. Like, makes you feel things. Feels like you're back in Skyrim. Like when you listen to the Skyrim soundtrack, you're like, wow, I'm back in Skyrim, at 2 a.m. just, riding my horse through the mountains as you look up at the Aurora Borealis is in the sky. You know what I mean? Like, just hearing the music can do that for you. And Baldur's Gate 3 has that kind of music. I mean, the music is so good. It's so much better than it needs to be. Because I kind of just assumed it was going to be classic high fantasy genre, generic music, but the melodies are very strong. They're very powerful. Each piece of music is just composed beautifully. I've never heard of the composer before, Borislav Slavov or something like that. I can't remember his name. Maybe I pronounced it wrong or whatever. But I've never heard of him before. But he is an exceptional composer, and the melodies are so strong in this game. There's that one melody you might be familiar with. It's the Down by the River one, down, down, down by the river, that thing. It just like, it gets in your head, but they take that melody, they use it for that song during character creation, and then they put it in the main theme. The main theme is actually that, but like it's a darker version of that, and then they'll put it on various other places in the game, but put into major chords, minor chords, and then like mess with it so that it fits the vibe of the scene, whether it's ominous or somber or joyful or whatever, but it's the same melody, and they just use it so well. And there's like 3 separate strong melodies that are used throughout the game for different effect, and it's just incredible. It's just really stand out. And even if you don't even ever get around to playing the game, just look up the soundtrack, listen to the soundtrack, because it'll blow your socks off. It's amazing. I want to talk about the companions really quickly. I mean, gosh, I could talk about the companions forever. But you probably already know this. I'm assuming this is not the first Baldur's Gate 3 video you've clicked on. Maybe you're someone who is thinking about getting the game and you're interested and you're watching videos on it, or maybe you've been playing the game and you just want to hear other people talk about it. But you're probably aware that the companions in this game, the 6 core companions, are just the exceptionally written, acted. The voice acting in this game is incredible. It's a fully voice acted game, by the way. But the 6 companions especially, just they're people. They're real people, and they have their own motivations and things. They're not just like along for the ride. Their storylines connect directly into the main plot. They are all feel like main characters, and that is the feeling of D&D. In D&D, you know, you take your classic D&D campaign, let's say there's a party of 4 players. All 4 players are important to the plot. They are the 4 main characters. There's no one player who's the main character. You know, all 4 of them are main characters. And it kind of feels like this, even though you are the main character and you're kind of the leader of the group, it's like even if you weren't there, the 6 companions, they still are so connected to the story. They still all have dynamic choices to make and all that kind of stuff. And you can have different relationships with each and every one of them. Some might not like you, some may like you, some you may irritate so much they leave you forever. But it's such a sandbox. Like I said, the game is such a sandbox. You can kill them. You never have to join up with them. You can kill them the first time you meet them. You can kill them later on. I mean, the game doesn't prevent you from doing anything like that. You can literally do whatever you want, and the game will still function completely fine. So that's just crazy that some people can go through the game solo without using any of the 6 companions, or get to the end of the game with all 6 companions. I obviously have kept all 6 companions. I don't want to scare any of them away or kick any of them out of my camp because I just love them so much. But they all grow on you, and they're real people. They have given them such clear motivation, such clear personalities, that the writers and the actor together just breathe life into these characters. And the scenes in which you interact with them and stuff, there's some like cutscenes and stuff that you can trigger depending on your relationship with them. And they're just so real and natural, and they don't feel like, oh, a video game cutscene or whatever. Even with the romances, which you've probably heard a lot about, all the different romances in the game. And it's fun. The romances are fun and stuff, but the romances are just done so naturally. It doesn't feel like click the right dialogue options and get awarded with a kiss scene, you know, or whatever. It just feels like you learn about these people. You can hear what they like and don't like. Very minor spoiler, but I'm romancing a character, and she mentions that she likes a certain kind of flower. I actually came across this flower. I plucked it out of the ground while I was walking around. Could have missed it, completely missed it, but I happened to pluck it. Next time I talked to her, I was able to give it to her. Because I was like, oh, I remember you like this flower. I mean, like, it's crazy. Like, it's so cool. And there's a scene where this one character is like dancing, invites me to dance with him. Just like, because like there's, you know, every day we go out and risk dying in the battlefield, but then at night, you know, just to have that moment of reprieve and like fun and like dancing together. It's just like, it's so beautiful, it's so real, and they're just written and acted and animated phenomenally. And it's just so great. I want to get to the core of why I think this game is so effective, why I think it's so strong, and why it's been blowing up. I mean, it's a CRPG. Like, this is not a commonly this genre is a little bit specific. You have to be a certain kind of gamer, I think, to like it and to get into it. But somehow casual gamers, all kinds of people are getting into this game. It's blowing up in popularity. And I want to get to why I think it's so strong and effective. Because it knows what it is and what it wants to be, and I just nails it right on the head. It doesn't pretend like it's any other kind of game or anything. I think the reason it's so strong comes down to the 3 main pillars of tabletop Dungeons & Dragons. In the Dungeon Master's Guide, maybe it's the player's handbook, but whatever, they talk about the 3 pillars of D&D, which are exploration, combat, and role-playing. Those are like the 3 different things you'll be doing in Dungeons & Dragons, and they all have different rules and all that kind of stuff pertaining to them, and it talks about balancing those 3 pillars and stuff. I think it's the Dungeon Master's Guide that talks about that. Anywho, this has really impacted me. I've talked about these 3 pillars on the podcast and this channel before. But I think why Baldur's Gate is so effective is the way that it does these 3 pillars so well. So let's start off with combat. The combat in this game is phenomenal. I mean, it works just like regular tabletop Dungeons & Dragons. It's turn-based. You have an action, movement, bonus action, all that kind of stuff. So if you're familiar with D&D, it's really easy to get into because you know all that, except you're controlling a party of 4 characters instead of just 1 character, so it can be a little bit overwhelming, especially at first. And later on when everyone has just a gazillion abilities each. But the combat is so strong, and the reason it's so strong is because it gives you dynamic. Every battle can be tackled in so many different ways. First of all, some battles can be completely avoided. For example, if you talk your way out of it before even getting into the fight, if you ambush them, if you sneak up on them and get them a surprise attack, can really help you. If you go up there and just start throwing people around, rush into the fight. There's all different ways you can just try to maybe walk around it, avoid the fight altogether, just sneak past them entirely. They don't ever like so many other video games pigeonhole you into, this is how you play the game, this is how you tackle situations. But combat in this game is not even, it doesn't even just feel like combat, it feels like a puzzle. Every encounter is a puzzle you have to solve with all of these tools at your disposal. Of course, the primary tools you're going to be using are your character's abilities, and so having a well-balanced party gives you access to just a crazy amount of tools that you can use when it comes to rogues, being able to have a lot of movement, plus being able to sneak attack. Wizards, a ton of utility spells. Druids being able to turn into animals or whatever. Clerics with healing abilities and damage types that are going to affect undeads and fiends and things like that. And then, of course, fighters and barbarians with tanky abilities, you know what I mean, to go up there and fight with weapon attacks and soak in a lot of damage. And so, first of all, you have that tool in your toolbox. Secondly, you have the environment. The environment in these games, in these encounters, are incredible. First of all, they're beautiful. This game is just visually super stunning, by the way. The environments are so beautifully detailed and realized. But there's levels to it, so if you have higher ground and you're shooting at someone lower than you, you get a bonus. If you're at lower ground shooting at someone higher than you, then you get some kind of disadvantage. And so, like height, like the verticality matters in the environment. There's also going to be all kinds of environmental tools around. If there's a cliff, you can push people or throw people off that cliff. You can pick up someone and throw them somewhere else. You can throw potions, healing potion at your downed friend to revive them, or whatever. And then there's also this extra layer of elemental combinations you can use. So for example, if there's like a smoke powder barrel or whatever, you can shoot it with a fire bolt or a fire arrow, and that will cause it to explode. Or like a barrel of ale or whatever. Then the ground will be burning, or people in that explosion will start to burn and they'll take extra damage. You can, if there's like an icy area, anyone who walks over it might have a chance of slipping on the ice. But then if you use fire, it'll melt the ice and turn it into water. And once it's a puddle of water, you can shoot an electric bolt at it. And then everyone who's standing in the water keeps getting electrocuted as long as a thing. But then you could just freeze it over again and make it a freezing puddle again. And you can combine all these different element types and stuff, and to create all these different like combos that like chain off each other and just add extra effectiveness. And all these tools make combat like this intricate puzzle. And enemies too are super dynamic. Some are going to have weaknesses that a certain class or character is going to be really good at dealing with, while other characters are barely going to be able to damage them. And so being able to examine your enemies, see, okay, what are their abilities? What are their resistances, immunities? How do I use my characters, the items and equipment I've gathered to best exploit their weaknesses and whatever. I mean, it really makes the game so dynamic. It makes combat so interesting and like a puzzle. Next is exploration, and you know, in tabletop D&D, that's just all the stuff you're doing when you're not role-playing or combat, right? That's when your character's traveling, when you're exploring, when you're going to new lands, when you're, you know, all that kind of stuff, when you're looting the bodies of your enemies. But this game can obviously do exploration a lot more like in your face and visceral, because it's a video game. You can see everything. It's a very visual medium. And so you can see the environment you're in. You can see every single bookshelf and all the different chests and the different corpses you can loot. And I mean, you can open everything. You can open vases, you can open bookshelves, you can open chests, you can open like crates and barrels and things, all these things you can search. And they have painstakingly filled like every barrel and crate in this game. Some are filled with whatever rags and a dead fish, so you don't need anything. But some are filled with a little spell scroller or some cool loot that if you hadn't searched that barrel randomly, you wouldn't have actually been able to get. But first of all, yes, as I said, the environments, I mean, it's just beautiful, gorgeous. But exploration is just so fun. The more you walk, you just see something, or you hear a character talking, so you want to go over and talk to them, and maybe they'll give you a side quest, side quests are amazing, by the way. They never are like silly little fetch quests. Each side quest is unique and really interesting, by the way. Or you'll see like a signpost and it'll point, oh, by the way, this way is this way. So you go over here, you'll see a statue, and then you have to make a religion check. Maybe you know about this thing, and then if you perceive something, you press a button, it will open up a thing, and then it will lead you down. The exploration is so natural. It's so just as real. There's no mini-map with all these quest markers everywhere like a Ubisoft game. There are important quest markers for the major quests that you're doing, but otherwise, there's like the map is almost blank in regards to little points. You just explore it on your own. You just walk around and explore it, and it's so fun, and you keep discovering new things. And I think that's one of the reasons the game is so addicting, is the reward loop. Is just, you are constantly getting little rewards, whether it's in XP or story tidbits or new character interactions with companions or new quest lines or some really cool loot or whatever. And so the more you go on, the more you keep walking down the path, or you want to branch off on the path or whatever, you keep finding interesting things. And right as you find something new, off in your periphery, you see a new interesting thing. Wait, is that a squirrel? Let me cast Speak with Animals. I want to go talk to that squirrel, see if he knows anything. So you go to the squirrel, talk to the squirrel, you have a funny little interaction. Maybe you convince him to go plucks a key out of the tree for you, and that unlocks a new quest line or something. And then, but while you're talking to the squirrel, you're like, oh wait, what the heck? I just succeeded on a perception check. I just saw a mound of dirt. Let me go to the mound of dirt. You dig it up with your shovel. There's a chest there. You open up the chest. But while you're opening the chest, you hear a conversation nearby. You go over there. These two people arguing. You want to talk to them, and there's just always stuff. It's not too much. It's not overwhelming, but there's always stuff to explore, stuff to see, people to talk to, and that really makes the exploration so addicting. You're just in this constant loop. You don't want to stop because you're like, what's around the next corner? If I just walk a few more steps, what is my character gonna be able to? Because you keep revealing more of the map the more you explore. And so it's like, I just want to reveal this area real quick. And as you walk through, you see new stuff. I mean, it's just so interesting, and it's so natural, and it's so addicting. And I think that is one of the reasons the game, you have this like loop that you just don't want to stop playing it, is because there's always something new to explore. And then finally, there is the role-playing element, which I've already described a little bit, but you can really role-play as your character. Their personality, their motivations. Do you want to be a murder hobo? Be a murder hobo. Do you want to side with the bad guys? There's a whole playthrough you can do this game, but siding with the villains instead of the good guys. I mean, it's hard for me to even imagine what that would look like, but I bet it's so fun. You can play this game as a goody two-shoes. You can play this game as more of a chaotic and neutral mercenary who only cares about the money, or whatever way you want to come at this game and play your character, you can play. And the role-playing in this game is so fun. I'm just as invested when I'm talking to an NPC than I am in combat where there's explosions and spells being cast and stuff. Voice acting is superb. Writing, super underrated. The writing in this game is absolutely exceptional. And I'm always interested, and there's characters talking about lore bits. I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about that little lore bit, or characters talking about their backstories or whatever. And even if they're not talking about anything super important, the acting and the writing and the animation alone is just makes it so compelling. I'm fine sitting there just clicking dialogue options and listen and talking and not skipping through the dialogue because it's so interesting. And if you're someone who likes that in video games, this is the game for you. I mean, you can just talk to everyone you want, and they have so many things to say, and there's so many things to learn about people. And if you're someone who usually doesn't really like the cutscenes and just wants to get to the action and stuff like that, you may have skip through some of the dialogue a little bit more than others. But even then, I really do think that the dialogue in this game is something special. It really is super, super special. I think back to my favorite game of all time, Last of Us Part 2. You know, obviously the story and the acting and the characters in that game that is the game. That's the most important part of the game, and that's what makes it so incredible. And the writing and all that kind of stuff is so good. It doesn't matter. The cutscenes are just as good as the combat. The combat's also amazing in that game, but because I care so much about these characters, I want to see them grow. I want to see them succeed. And that's just like the same in Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, it's exceptional how much I care about these characters. I want to know more about them. I want to help them in the things that they need my help with. If it's a villain, I want to kill him so badly. You know what I mean? And I just hate him. And you know, it's so fun to just hate a villain. And it's just, the role playing is just exceptional. Last thing I want to touch on real quick, because I know I've been rambling for a while now. But just the story, the game's main story. Like I said, the side quests are really, really good. And another great thing about it is you can completely miss them if you want to. You don't have to do them. They're not required. But you should do them because each one is so endearing and has its own fun, unique little adventure for you. You really should do them. And the loot is always very satisfying to get at the end. Or the ending of that storyline or whatever is fun to get. The main story is perfect in my opinion because it has a perfect level of like, there's this kind of intense thing that's happening and that we want to race to stop, but the pressure is not so much so that I feel like I can't explore. and take my time and really live in the world and explore it, because there's a ticking time bomb that I have to get to. Keep in mind, there is a ticking time bomb in certain events and stuff like that. If you are given a quest line or whatever and you take too long to complete it, it will actually progress without you, usually to a negative outcome. So you do want to make sure you do pursue certain storylines as soon as you can, to make sure that, you know, if there's someone who's going to get executed or whatever, you got to go race to stop that from happening, or else it's just going to happen. So there is that, but I think the story strikes a perfect balance of being interesting enough. I want to explore the main story and stuff, but it's not everything, and it's not so intense and trying to always pull my attention that I can't relax and explore the world at my own pace. I think the main story is very, very strong compared to most other video games. I think in general, video games have pretty bad stories. Story's not very important in lots of video games, even like a lot of story games or RPG games just have a lot of weak stories. You know, obviously exceptions are like the Naughty Dog games, like I mentioned, like Last of Us. But even I think of some Halo. I love the Halo games and stuff, but like the stories aren't, you know, they're not super special or interesting. You know, you play the game so you can shoot grunts, you know what I mean? I mean, they're really cool, but the story in this game, I think, is definitely one of the stronger stories in video games I've seen in a very long time. Obviously not the best of the best that I've ever seen, but I think it's really strong. I think it's consistently strong too. I think it's actually paced pretty well as well. I've heard some people say that they don't like the pacing of the main story over the course of the 3 acts, and once again, I'm only a bit of a way into Act 3, so I can't say on this for sure. But from what I have played so far, I actually really like the pacing of the main story. I really think the way that it connects the 6 companions, and then of course me as the Dark Urge as well, or Talion, my character. I think it's really interesting. I'm really curious. The mystery is very strong of wanting to know more about what's going on and stuff like that, and as you uncover more and more, and the twists and the turns the main story takes, really cool. The main villains are great. They're very, very, very strong. I just think the main plot in general is really, really strong, and I just think that's the fact that is as strong as well. I feel like it didn't even have to be that good, and this game would already be a masterpiece. But the fact that the main story is also as good as it is, especially compared to 99% of other video games, really puts it's the final, you know, nail in the coffin of why this game is like no other game. This really is a masterpiece. It really is 10 out of 10. And you've probably heard that before, and you maybe already, if you're playing it, you already know that. But this game really is exceptional. If you're someone who loves D&D, I don't care if you're not a gamer, you can get into this game. Trust me, especially if you're already familiar with the mechanics, it'll do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. If you're someone who wants to play D&D but hasn't had a chance to do it in person, this will scratch that itch for you. It'll get that itch for you for what you've been wanting. If you're someone who doesn't do any of those things or whatever, I still think you should give this game a try. It's a little bit overwhelming, especially at first, the mechanics and stuff like that. But it's the kind of game where you can try around and fail and make some mistakes and learn as you go, and it'll work. It naturally works. You don't have to have the system mastered whatsoever at the beginning. Plus, it's one of those games where you can save scum your way through it. If you make a mistake, whatever, just reload the previous save. Now, in general, I would suggest not doing that. Let your rolls fail when they fail, because it can lead to really interesting outcomes. And I mean, that's what I did. I think it's really fun. But, you know, there's no harm in also if you're someone who's a save scummer who just wants the best outcome in every single roll. You can go ahead and do that too. But anyway, that was my very long-winded talk about this game. I just think it's amazing. It's so worth your time. Those are some of the reasons why I think it's strong and why I think it's so easy to get addicted to it. And you should play it. And this probably also won't be the last time I talk about Baldur's Gate. But I needed to just get some stuff out. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you want more Baldur's Gate content, D&D content, make sure you subscribe. And if you guys want to talk about Baldur's Gate as much as I do, just get in the comments. Let's talk about it. Let's just have conversations in the comments about this game, because I just love this game. Of course, just make sure you give any warnings at the beginning of your comment if you're going to be spoiling the game at all. All right, guys, I will see you later.